Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. I am your host, Dr. Enolia, and it brings me great pleasure to introduce to you Teresa Vitoria. I wanted to say the Victoria first. So, let me tell you a little bit about our guest. She is an interior designer and an entrepreneur renowned for her innovative approach to creating purpose built environments with a deep belief in the integral role that a surrounding plays in our lives. So, Teresa developed a method that programs environments and interiors to optimize and harmonize their future. At the helm of the Alchemya, Teresa channels her passion for outcome driven design into every project, ensuring that each space not only reflects the client's vision, but also fosters flow and balance. Her unique perspective combines intentional design with scientific insights, allowing her to transform the emotional resonance of intent of a space. Through her work, Teresa aims to educate others about the profound impact of our environments, advocating for design that nurtures the mind and body and soul. Teresa Victoria aspires to elevate the way we interact with spaces we live in. So welcome, Teresa.
Thank you, Dr. Enolia. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning to you. Good afternoon.
Wherever you are in the world, and you're coming to us from
Exactly.
Portugal, so it's afternoon for you, morning for me,
Yeah.
right now, where I'm visiting at the moment. So I'm really excited because people don't think about spaces.
Hmm.
They don't think about spaces. I want to back us up to even starting with the earth. The earth, the ley lines,
Hmm.
and just how the earth is gridded itself, and the fact that the earth has energy, and then everything that she amplifies that we stand on has energy, and how that impacts spaces. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always like to say, most people, when they think about a space, whatever that space is, whether it's your home or a hotel or an office or a restaurant, doesn't matter, an outdoor space, people always, the first thing that comes to mind is, what do I want that space to look like?
Hmm.
And the question that I like asking is, what do we want that space to feel like?
Absolutely.
Because it's how we feel in a space that is really going to change our experience of that space. Now, you touched on energy and natural energy lines and grids of the earth. I work a little bit with that as well, incorporated into my practice. So the earth, of course, has the natural energy lines, ley lines, and other Curry lines, Hartman lines, lots of different energy lines. And also, we have, energy that comes through streams of water that may be coming underneath our spaces. But we also have EMFs, and we have all this other energy around us, which is here to stay. We can't do really anything not for now anyway, to make it go away. So, how do we design spaces where the energy is harmonized so all of these energies are beneficial to us, and they're not draining us, and they're actually amplifying our natural energy and how we experience our daily lives.
I love this because people don't understand how imperative this is. And I say imperative, right? Because we don't realize or we take for granted the energetic imprints that we leave in spaces. And I
Mhm.
really want to go there so that people understand that what you bring to the table is so important, because what we take for granted is that we can walk into a space. Like, for example, I was house hunting, right? Here I am, I'm house hunting. I check out a space, oh, it's okay, and I'm looking at the aesthetics and whatnot. But there are some places where I walked in and I'm like, oh, heck no. And I walk right back out. And the reason I walk in and walked out is because the back of the hairs of my neck stood up.
Mm.
Whatever took place in that home prior to me being there left such an energetic imprint of negativity
Mm,
I don't know if they were fighting. I don't know if they were angry. I don't know if some a traumatic event took place there. I don't know what took place there, but
mm,
there was an imprint such that the moment that I walked in, it put me on edge. It made me uncomfortable. It made me feel like I was not welcomed
mm.
and I
Interesting.
shouldn't be there. And I'd like to talk about us as energy beings and the energetic imprints that we leave in spaces such that spaces are marked in that regard. Can you elaborate a little bit or talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all have intuitive abilities. Some of us are not so. Some people are not so able to tap into it. They think they can't tap into it because their minds don't slow down. So
Right.
any one of us, when we slow down, we calm, we meditate, we put ourselves into a state where we can become more sensitive to these energies. And what you were saying about walking into a space and either saying it feels amazing. So I love to design from that perspective. When I'm explaining it to clients who haven't really thought about this perspective, I like to say, when you walk into a space and you say, "Wow, this space has like this amazing energy." Let's
Yes.
think about how what is the reason behind that, and how we can design that. On the other hand, we also have these spaces where we walk into and we say, I don't know. I don't even know what's here. I don't know, but I need to get out of here like ASAP. And we don't know, most of the times, we don't know what's behind that or why we feel like that, or what's happened in those spaces that makes us feel like that, what energy is stuck there. But absolutely, our imprint is there. So I mean, we should all be a little bit more, how can I put it? We should also be living in a more calm state, so that the spaces that we live through, we don't leave that imprint there. But of course,
Right.
there's things, and there's all sorts of situations that happen with people around us that we don't control. So what we can control is, how do we design these spaces so that we feel safe in these spaces, that we feel good in
Mhm.
these spaces, that these spaces foster connection, that we really feel that they embrace us. And so these are, two different things that we can look at when we're walking into a space. And we should be very mindful of these initial intuitions that we have when we walk into a space, and just really allow ourselves to feel the space. And what comes to mind, what do we think? Are we really feeling that we are starting to feel like we belong in that space? Sometimes we walk into spaces, some people don't think about it, but I've had situations where I walk in through a space. It can even be a commercial space, for example. It can be a shop, something like that. I've had this numerous times where I walk in and all of a sudden it's like something is like uh, pressing my brain, and I just need to get out of there like immediately. And you really feel this really, really heavy energy. So we should be a little bit more mindful when we walk into spaces, whatever those spaces are, indoor, outdoor spaces. And then from there, start thinking about, okay, what is it in this space that makes me feel really, really good? It really wants me to stay and to feel like, I feel like I belong.
Yeah, and then don't we attach memories and
Mhm.
as human beings, we have a certain attachments no matter where we pass through, right? Because if I'm checking out a space and then one of my favorite songs are playing and boom, right there, that's a memory. That is,
Absolutely.
or if the space is feeling beautifully harmonized and it makes me feel really good in there, I keep that memory of that feeling and then I go back to that feeling over and over again to that space. So spaces hold resonance for us just like a memory would, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. They absolutely do. And we again, we tend to focus on the visual, but we when we go into a space, all the senses are in play. So it's not just the visual, but there are things that we don't think about, but that really influence our experience of that space. So things like temperature,
Mhm.
or things like sound, things like light. color. There's all sorts of different, even tactile experiences. So, imagine if you're going into a hotel lobby and you're sitting on a sofa, and you put your hand on the material, you touch the cushions, and the texture of that cushion is going to have an impact, a subtle, but it's going to have an impact on your experience of that space. So all of these things come into play, and this is, for my one of the things that I incorporate in my design practice is putting all these things into play. So if we're designing, for, let's say, a bedroom, it needs to be designed in a way where we're going to have optimized rest, optimized sleep, and take away everything that's going to take away from that rest. So you're not going to put in like an insane, modern, vibrant piece of art, because that's going to disrupt your sense of calm in that space.
Mm.
Then when you look at the fabrics, for example, that you're going to put on your headboard or on your cushions, or even the quality of your sheets, all of these things, these tactile things also have an influence. Then we can talk about temperature, we can talk about sound, we can talk about, all these things. And they absolutely have a very important role. And so also you touched upon memories, which is something that, again, we don't, because there's so many things that we do on autopilot, like,
Yes, yes.
when you think about a home, most of us have moved home a
Hmm.
few times, and it always involves this exercise of, packing all these things we have, putting them in boxes, moving them to the next home, and unpacking and just putting things around. Most of the times we don't clear out things. We don't sort of take our time to say and stop and say, okay, where am I right now in my life? Okay, what this new home, how is this new home going to be lived in? Maybe something's changed. Maybe you've changed, to a completely different city, or your family structure has changed.
Hmm.
Maybe your children are no longer home. Maybe you've divorced and you're living alone, or maybe you're getting married and you're now bringing two different energies of two different people into the home. There's all these different things. And then we have all of these things, all of our personal items that we collect, things like photographs, things like memorabilia, these whatever, pieces of art. And sometimes those individual items don't make sense in each home. Okay.
Okay.
So, so if I'm designing a new home, let's say for myself, I'm going to look at, okay, where am I right now in my life? What brings me joy? Like right now, what brings me joy? Right now, in this moment, what brings me joy is these beautiful photos that I have all over my home of my children who are adults, and my youngest just got married last week. And, I'm itching
Congratulations.
to, thank you. I'm itching to put, that photograph into a frame. And that's what makes me happy right now. And of course, there might be photographs of, other family members, of friends, but it's what resonates with me right now. And sometimes we bring in things from too many things from the past, and we're always bringing things from the past, and
I
we're
want
not
to go there with you too. Go ahead.
and we're not
Yeah.
sufficiently focusing on what is this, what is the present moment, what really grounds me in this present moment.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too because a lot of people have problems letting go,
Mm,
right? And I really would love to understand how that past memorabilia, that past old energy really impacts the spaces because I'm one of those people, I subscribe to this, right? Unpack the old, you bring in the new, right? So the more that I unpack and get rid of and shift out and the newer items come in, then I'm in my present moment and I'm really establishing myself to project something beautiful for the future and not holding on to the things that the way that they were. That's me, I've always been like that. And then, I'm one of those people like after I've been in my home for about 3 or 4 months, I'll shift and change the front room furniture every 3 months, every 4 months, just because I get bored with it. One, it feels stagnant, and
mm.
I just feel like I have to shake things up. But, are those practices good or like,
No,
what do
those.
they mean in the mainstream of things?
Yeah, I mean that's amazing that you do that, and that's what all of us should be doing. Um,
Really? Okay.
Absolutely. So I'm going to say two things. One of the things is that in this approach, people who don't know me and most of my clients come through recommendation, and we start talking about so what does designing from this perspective look like? Okay, so let's say
Okay.
that I'm not starting in a new home, and I'm not building something new, and I'm not building a new restaurant or a new hotel or whatever. I've got something existent, and they want to work with me, and they say, but I don't want to, I've just let's just say I've just bought all this furniture, I just bought all these things. I don't want to get rid of all this, and I'm like, or I don't want to buy new things is normally what they say. I say, no, no, most of the times, this involves clearing out and having less things than than adding more things on. That's one of the
Right.
things. And on that note, I just like to mention a very, very interesting perspective that I heard many times in 2020 and 2021. So we were just post COVID, and I'm based in Lisbon, Portugal. And because we were such an appealing destination, many people moved here during COVID, and I met a number of very, very beautiful, interesting people who moved here. And the obvious question is, why did you move here? They give you all these great stories and all this stuff. And throughout these conversations, there was a repeat story, which I thought, wow, this is really interesting and very inspiring to me for my work and for what I do. A number of people said to me, I came to Portugal for 2 weeks, and with a suitcase or with two suitcases, whatever, came to Portugal for 2 weeks, and I just stayed. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And I said, well, what are you going to do now? Well, they said, I have all my stuff packed up in a storage room back in my, where I came from. Um, or I have all these things stored up, and I've been living out of two suitcases for a year. And my question is, so how many of that stuff that we've had, that we've collected, that we always think we can't get rid of, do we really need that stuff? We don't need that stuff, right? And these people are saying, I've never been happier, never felt better. This is just amazing. And it's fascinating that I can just live with so many few things. And that for me was a story that I heard over and over again. And I thought it was like really inspiring.
I'm smiling because I was one of those people. I've
It's like
actually
when
thought
you,
I was going to go visit in Africa for just, a couple of weeks, a few weeks, and come back. And I just never came back. I just
yeah,
never came back, and then it established living there, et cetera, et cetera. So I get it. I get it. And you do let go of a lot of things. And it's so funny because I recently just closed up my storage unit and everything. And I was able to get rid of a huge percentage more of stuff. Like I had already gotten rid of a ton of stuff just to put it in storage. And then I got rid of a huge percentage more of stuff, and I found that the things that I really cherish were just things that I like to keep by me, on my crystals, or things like that. But in terms of furniture, gone. In terms of dishes and stuff like that, because those things are so replaceable, and they're so easy to reacquire, and then your taste changes, you want something a little bit different, a little bit new. There's nothing wrong with that, you know
and
and
it's great to bring in this new energy of new things.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. And so, like, realizing that all of those things are going to change and shift and whatnot, I just started learning. My mantra is, no attachment. Just I'm
Mm.
just not going to get attached to it to a point where, oh my God, I have to have it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like, okay, no attachment. I'm just no attachment to it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful, and it's that touches on another point, which is, when we I'm focusing a lot on our personal homes. It's just easy. I think it's easier for people to relate with, but these principles can adapt to commercial spaces, of course. But when we focus on our homes, you know, one of the questions I like to ask also is, how many decisions do we make when we buy furniture, buy certain items, buy certain things, how many decisions do we make really for ourselves? Or how many decisions do we make saying, this is going to look great. My friends are going to love seeing this. I'm going to paint my room with this color because that's like this year's Pantone. How many of these things do we do on autopilot to impress others rather than stop and say, okay, I'm the person living here. I'm the one who spends most time. I'm the one who's going to be in control of who I allow into my space. What do I
True.
want this space to feel like?
I think you said something really, really important there. And, we have I think that there are two types of people. There are people who are always looking to entertain, and there are people who just don't want to entertain at all.
Hmm.
You know, and when I say don't entertain at all, that we look at our space like our safe haven, right? This is
Hmm.
where I can rest. This is where I can be. So I don't necessarily want everybody's energy into my home, and et cetera, et cetera. And then others are like, entertain, come over. My house is like Grand Central Station. You're welcome, blah, 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 blah. And I just find it really, really interesting because each each type of person develops what I like as a shaman, and I look at it as the heart of the home a different way,
Hmm.
because typically when I look at the heart of the home is the busiest part of the home, the busiest space used
Hmm.
in the home that people constantly frequent, whether you live there or whether you just have friends over and whatnot. So the heart of your home might be your living room. The heart of your home might be your basement, right? Because you always have people come over and then they go into the man cave, and the man cave is where it's watching TV and this, that, and the other, or if you're living alone and you always like to be in the kitchen,
Hmm.
the heart of your home might be in the kitchen because that's where most of the activity takes place, and then the other space is there, but because you're alone, you just don't spend that much time there, you know? So it's really interesting to understand that the ebb and flows of how people use spaces. So let's get into some of your work. You take all of this into consideration. I'm a customer, I'm a client, I come to you, Teresa, can you help me design my space?
Hmm.
You know, and how does it vary between commercial and personal? And then what are the most important pieces to take into consideration?
Well, maybe let's start with the commercial because we've been talking a lot about the personal. So,
Okay.
in terms of the commercial space, there's a business side of the commercial space, which I like to tap into because I initially studied hotel management. So I have that these little there's always concepts that are in the back of my head. So first of all, we need to think about the practical things of like what kind of business is it? Is it if it's a restaurant, how many hours do we want that client to sit in that chair? Um, how comfortable do we need them to feel? Do we need them to feel comfortable for 4 hours? Is it a three Michelin star restaurant? Then we need to think about all of these environmental, and when I say environmental, our surroundings, that after 4 hours, you're still comfortable and you're not, moving around in your chair because you're still comfortable, you're still enjoying the experience. And for the business owner, you're obviously still consuming and still spending. Um, but what is going to be the memories that are going to be created through that experience that are going to make that customer want to return and make them they feel good, they want to return. If we're looking at a hotel, that's an endless conversation because hotels, I always say they have so much potential for repeat business if they can just understand that if they can tap into what makes a customer feel at home, that they belong in a space, they're embraced in a space. Many people spend an endless number of nights per year in hotels for business and for pleasure. um, when you stay in a hotel space, for example, and there's a certain energy, there's a combination of elements that touch all of the senses that give you this experience that you say, wow, I've been here for 24 hours. It feels like I've been here for a week. I've been able to switch off. I've never slept better. I just don't want to leave this space. So what are the, so going into that, tapping into all of that, and and then obviously going into all the details to make that happen. But when we're looking into a personal space, that's where I really like to ask the question, how do you want to feel in that space? How do you want to feel in that space? And when we talk about big homes, for example, that have many rooms, you have a kitchen, you might have a TV room, then you might have a sitting room, separate dining room. Maybe you're lucky to have space to have a home office, maybe a playroom, bedrooms, et cetera, et cetera. So looking at all these individual spaces and how do we use these spaces, how many hours we spend as individuals in that space, how many hours we spend entertaining, um, and how we use, especially how we use each one of those spaces. So, for example, if we're talking about the kitchen, obviously we want functionality, but we want to create an environment where we want to feel like we want to cook, and we want to feel like, we want to have this spark of creativity. It doesn't, so that doesn't feel like, it's this horrible task. No, we want to feel like we want to be there. I was just talking to a client recently who I was fascinated by. She told me one of her favorite spaces was the laundry room. And I was like, wow, and the laundry room has this incredible view out to the property. And I was like, that's like crazy. I never even thought about that. The laundry room, you don't even think about that. But like, yeah, if you have to do all this ironing and laundering, all this stuff, why not? If you're fortunate enough to have a beautiful view, why
That makes
not
sense.
make that a future, right? And not feel like, oh, I have to go into the laundry room again. And then we apply this, to numerous spaces. So if we're talking about a home office, for example, we want a space that feels calming, that has an incredible energy where time just evaporates, and we can just go into flow of our work, whatever our work is. And we have this energy quality, this harmonized feeling where things just come quicker, things just happen faster, in a good way. um, then we go into spaces like, for example, the bedroom. Again, that's another, for me, that's one of the most important rooms in the home, because it's
Mhm.
where we all spend most of the time.
Yes.
um, that takes me to another point, where it's, we don't often think about where and how we spend what we spend in our homes. Nobody questions, if you want to buy this incredible new sports car, nobody's going to question how many hours do you sit in that sports car per day, right? You might spend like maybe 15, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, but nobody spends 8 hours a day in that sports car. And yet, if I say to someone, spend $10,000 on a mattress, they're going to look at me like, are you crazy?
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, but it's like the bedroom is one of the most important spaces. So I've had clients who, say, oh, I'd love to. I haven't been sleeping that well, but they don't really make a big thing out of it, because most of us, most people around us say, oh, I'm not sleeping that well. That's one of the biggest, I think, one of the biggest complaints that we hear every day. And I've had clients that I work with more in harmonizing the energy of their homes. The first place where they really feel the impact is the bedroom, because
Okay.
that's where they're more in a more rested state. And when there's this harmonization of the energy, um, all my clients to date have felt the impact, overnight. You know, the next day they're calling me. They're saying, "Wow, I cannot remember. I don't know what you did. I cannot remember having such restorative, relaxed sleep." I've had clients who said to me, I haven't had lucid dreams for more than 2 years. And suddenly there's this sleep state that I'm in that they just, can't explain it. And it has to do with the energy of the space. Um,
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's unpack that a little bit because when I hear about the corrective energetic space, I think of biogeometry. That's the first inclination that comes to me. And for those who don't know what biogeometry is, Dr. Ibrahim Karim worked with certain physics respects of energy in terms of being able to create particular pieces that can shift how
Mhm.
the energy flows in a particular room. Is it the
Mm.
same thing? Is it a little bit of that plus something else? Talk to us a little bit about your approach and your methodology to correcting energy states. And the reason I brought up ley lines in the beginning also was because I've always been told if there's certain ley lines running through the middle of your space and you're
Mhm.
having a very adverse reaction to it, that there's a way to correct that also. And I've only heard about it through biogeometry, but I'd
Mm.
love to hear and explore and understand a little bit more.
Yeah, there's certain. So I studied biogeometry in the last 4 or 5 years,
Okay.
and I just love the approach because it's not woo woo. It's scientific.
Yeah.
Dr. Kareem has dedicated his life to biogeometry and to developing, these approaches that have incredible results. And basically, is just looking at the resonance, the frequency and the resonance of angles, of certain shapes, of certain colors, of certain combinations of numbers. All of these things have a certain energy quality, and depending on, the room, and there's techniques to pick up on, what approach is best to be used. If it's a combination of numbers, if it's a combination, if it's a different, combination placing of colors, or if it's a placing of certain angles, this has a measurable uh, energy quality that can be used to optimize the energy and to harmonize the energy in the space. And this is something that I use in combination with other things. So I use other techniques as well, not techniques, I mean approaches in terms of these things that have to do with the senses, of bringing in, all of more of the design elements, in terms of um, it can be fabrics, it can be um, different kinds of items, but it can also be, for example, furniture that's designed to certain proportions, which will have a certain energy quality. And all of this together really does harmonize the energy of a space. Now, when you talk about ley lines, I recently visited a client's home in Denmark, and she has I've never been in a home like that. The setting is beautiful. It's a beautiful cottage set on the edge of the water, between Denmark and the northern shore of Denmark, facing Sweden. And it's just insane because it has a ley line going straight through the middle of the home, straight through the middle of the living room. And when I visited, I don't think I can't remember being in a space where the energy was so intense, not in a bad way, in a good way, but it was so intense going through that. But because of that, the intensity of that energy going through the home, on the first floor in her bedroom, which is just off of this placement of this ley line, she wasn't really getting enough restful sleep. And so I used some principles within color and combination of, sometimes it can be very subtle things that can really change this energy quality to optimize it. And so there's ways to harmonize it. So with the thing that I love about biogeometry is, whereas in feng shui, for example, you need to move furniture around and move things to different places. In biogeometry, through these angles and these shapes, um, working with these resonances, you can really change the energy of the space without having to move anything around. I mean, if you have, if you have your bed on top of a negative energy line, then you really should move it. But there are ways to harmonize that energy so it's not detrimental to your health.
Right, right, through biogeometry. I am familiar with that. That's wonderful in the respect that it gives you a lot more flexibility because feng shui is just like your couch has to face this way, and it's just like, okay, well, it's facing the corner, and that that doesn't appeal to me, and I really don't want it to be that way, but this is what works. And
Yeah.
then as vibrational beings and energetic beings ourselves, I understand that everything is energy and everything
Mm.
gives off a vibration. And what I think I love the most about biogeometry is that you can measure that. So it takes a special art and a special, talent to really bring all of those particulars together so that you have an overall harmonic resonance that is
Mm.
appealing to the physical container that we're in, to make sure that we just flow with it versus the fact that, okay, so my color is red and red's my favorite color and I want everything red, and it's just like, oh, no, 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 no. Bring in some of those blues or those hues that are they're
Mm.
calming and warm, and
Mhm.
and tone that fire down a little bit, because you don't want to be bouncing off the walls all of the time.
Yeah.
And that's interesting that you have to select. How do you deal with people with when, because we have our favorite colors, and it's just like, oh, I love my hues of this, and this, and how do you work with that?
Well, it's not that difficult, if you have a certain particular color that you love, or colors that you love, it's just working with those colors. Where do we place those colors? Do we paint all of the walls red, or do we say, okay, let's use red as an accent color in certain elements, whether it's cushions
Ah,
or paintings or
okay.
yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up. It reminds me of a project that I worked on a couple of years ago in Paris with a client of mine whose absolute favorite color is pink. Um, but also she loves turquoise because it reminds her of her mother. She had this connection, it brings her a lot of memories, and it's so interesting. So the main living room is just this wonderful play on pinks and these different hues of pinks and of turquoises. And when we initially started it, I was thinking like, wow, how am I going to make this work? And I found a way to put a mural on one of the walls. These
Oh, wonderful.
these beautiful Parisian apartments. They have, these the walls have, frames, inlaid frames in them and all that stuff. So I did a bit of that, and that was the starting point for then the rest of the design of the space. And then just harmonizing the energy in general is normally done with things that you can't even, I mean, you wouldn't even notice them. They're like just small details that you won't notice, and that's enough to harmonize. But the interesting result of that project was that when everything was finished and she had a beautiful gathering for her close friends, and we were there, and she had friends who were, friends for decades, and some of them came up to me and they said, wow, Teresa, congrats, because we've never seen a home that really translates this person's personality, who she is. It's so, I like to say, from a design point of view, it's not, I'm not going to be living in the home. The client's going to be living in the home, and I have the responsibility of pointing out mistakes. So if they say, like, I really want this, okay, I say, maybe let's think about that, because these might be the consequences, medium or long term, of making that kind of decision. And then they understand why I wouldn't point them in that direction, and they say, oh, okay, but I still love that. Can we incorporate that in a different way? And of course, there's always ways of doing that. Yeah.
So then I'm going to switch gears on you. Talk to us a little bit about you. Tell us your story, because it is a great intuitive insight and a gift to be able to navigate through this. Yes, we take classes. Yes, we understand.
Mm.
Okay, so you had to formally take, let's say, a biogeometry class. Yeah, so okay, we get it. Yes, you formally take interior design, right? But there are many people who take it and aren't successful at it. Okay, and so there is a gift, and after a certain point, we transcend. We
Mm.
transcend what we've
Mhm.
been taught out of books and out of classrooms and everything else. So I know that you're a very beautiful spiritual light. Talk to us a little bit about how your gifts were able to match that which you studied in order to flow where you are.
Okay. So I've been doing interior design for about 25 years. And I did, traditional interior design. When I say traditional, interior design as most people know it, designing beautiful spaces. I've I've been very fortunate to work with many, many clients in different countries, um, personal projects, commercial projects, incredible. I've been really, really fortunate. And in 2020, COVID. So when COVID happened and we were all, in that bubble of,
Yeah.
just I think time just stopped in that bubble. Um, I had gone through a personal life change myself. So I was living by myself for the first time. I had never lived by myself. So that was during, these lockdowns. I was in this apartment, which was not very big, but had a beautiful outdoor space. And when I moved to this apartment, and this was all during COVID, I was like, how do I, what do I really, I'm going to just start from zero. And what do I need to feel good in this space? How do I want to use this space? So I knew I wanted to, to have um, a great dining space for my family, for my friends, for these gatherings, and just. But how then do I want to rest? And how do I want to relax when I'm home alone? I'm going to be spending a lot of time alone. So I started from that started me thinking about a lot of different things. And during this stage, um, with something completely not related to anything design wise, I did a mentorship program for personal development based on neuroscience. And it was fascinating to me how we're always on autopilot on everything in our lives. And there's all these concepts about the senses and how, well, not concepts, they're proven scientific. Um, Elements that we do things that we don't think about and how they influence us and how they influence how we live. I'm just going to give you an example. It is scientifically proven that people who live in a messy environment, whose homes are always not tidy,
Right.
the
Yeah.
environment is messy, it's scientifically proven that they are 50% more prone to crossing a red line.
Oh, okay.
And this is just an example of like so many different things. And I thought, wow, there's actually these principles that would be really cool to think about them in terms of interior design and how we think about our spaces, how we design our spaces. So that sort of started me sort of thinking and thinking. And then from there, all the research that I went into and then started tapping into biogeometry and then did biogeometry trainings. And it came to this place now of this is the only way that it makes sense for me to design. I find it extremely challenging if someone says to me, well, they can't say that to me because if they say it to me, I'll always do something that doesn't need to be discussed. So I will always be doing things intentionally with an intention for an outcome rather than just the visual.
Okay. Is there a zone that you go into when you finally like get a space and the person's presented to you all of their colors and blah 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 blah? Do you see it before it's even done? Like it's just like an envisioned space. Like for example, when I'm writing, right? I've written 4 books, and when I'm writing, and yes, the words are flowing from me, but after a certain point, it's to a point where I'm in such a zone that I'm really not writing, I'm describing what I see
Mm-hmm,
because
hmm.
I'm there. I
Yeah.
am there. I've transcended that space and place where I'm like, okay, creator, please give me the words and let them come from me. And what do I do with the story? No, I'm so past that. And it's like the story is already there and I'm zooming in on it and I'm describing what I see, which takes a whole different turn in terms of having to write. And then I get in such a flow of this. Like each day I'd go to my coffee shop, I'd order my coffee, I'd order my muffin. And for the next 4 to 6 hours, I was in a zone.
Mm.
And then it just came through me versus coming from me. Does that
Mm.
happen when you're working?
Mm. Yeah, it's more so when I love asking questions and I love listening to my clients and their stories and asking them questions that they haven't considered and thought about themselves and all these questions about how they really use their space and but also lots of points that tap into like their cultural background. Most of my clients are international, so they can be from any continent, any country, culture, religion. And I love, listening to all of that, but also listening to like what is their day-to-day life like. So, how their daily life flows. Sometimes I've had a few instances where I've been lucky to actually be staying with my clients for 1 or 2 days. And that's great because you just observe, from all the waking hours, you just observe how their day flows. And there's like always things that they haven't thought about that can be improved and that can improve their living experience in their home. But when I'm having these conversations and we're discussing, past the questions and then them telling me, but I really want to incorporate this, or I really hate that, and then I have I've just inherited all this art and I need to put this up, and we're looking at all these different elements, and I start in my mind, I just it's difficult because I process the image quicker than I can verbalize. So I'm like just like getting super excited because in my head I'm talking to them and we're in this empty room and I'm just already in my head I'm already seeing it completely finished and I can visualize it exactly what it's going to look like. And that's a little bit my struggle, is just trying to verbalize because they can't keep up with, and I can't put it into words quick enough to describe how I'm seeing it. And then I'm just, and it's like snowballs. So I'm like, and this, and then we're going to do that and put that, and because I can visualize it all. So yes, that really helps to have that ability to visualize it, but while the ideas are flowing, that is really. And then there's other things. So with the biogeometry, what's been interesting is that I've had projects, and namely, I've been working on this farm in Sweden with different aspects of the farm, between the buildings and the growing and the land and all of the elements of it. And one of the things that I had to design for the farm were these growing beds for the vegetables. And Sweden's a very harsh environment for growing. And this farm is in the south, which is farmland, but still there's a lot of constraints to be and things to be taken into consideration. So when I was designing these growing beds, I was just, I had the plan, the map of the land. I knew where it was going to be placed, where these growing beds were going to be built. And I went, I don't know, maybe like for 2 weeks, just doing drawings and sketchings. And I had ideas of proportions and the kind of proportions I wanted to work with from an energy perspective. But the layout, I don't know, I just went back and forth with drawings and drawings. And it wasn't until I was, a couple of weeks later when I got there and I was standing actually on the point of the land, it was just instant. It's just instantly in my head, this image just of what it needed to look like. And that's what's there. That's what's there now. Um, yeah, so that's something that I wasn't expecting when I started designing in this way, but it's definitely becoming more and more frequent.
Yeah. So we're coming up on an hour. Oh my goodness, I can't believe how fast the time's going.
Wow.
But I have one more question for you before we start start wrapping it up, which is that what was your most challenging project and why?
What was my most challenging project and why? Oh, I can tell you what my most challenging project was, but yeah. One of my most challenging projects was a client of mine who owns a couple of restaurants, and we'd worked for a few times before. And he called me one day and asked me to make some changes as quickly as I could. And I took on the responsibility of changing that in, I think, the project in terms of planning and having things made. And it was like 5 weeks, but it was turning something around in 48 hours. So it was
Oh,
basically,
wow.
imagine a restaurant having lunch service and clients leaving at 4 p.m. And next day at 8 a.m., there was a team of 13 people in there, tearing
Wow.
it apart, tearing it apart. And 48 hours later, we were opening up a bottle of champagne and celebrating that was completely done.
That's fantastic. That's
Yeah. But can
fantastic.
I just add another one? Just because.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so this farm I was just mentioning in Sweden, it wasn't so much of a challenge, it was more of a surprise, even to myself, to my clients, to myself, and to the people who visit. So I work with the designing the energy of the home of the owners of the farm. They live there, the the event space, the land. They also have a restaurant, which I've also worked on the energy of that. But this designing with worked with the designing the energy of the greenhouse and of the growing beds, and the results were just so interesting. So they had because it was designed from like just creating this certain energy without knowing what was going to come of it. Um,
Hmm.
and it was just so interesting. They had tomatoes, which were like 1.3 kilos. And things happened such as the chickens never approached the growing beds when the vegetables were growing, which is something like
That's unheard of.
that's unheard of.
That's unheard of.
Um, no pesticides. We had things like, for example, in their home, they had one of the rooms the cats just would not go into. And then after we worked on that, the next day, the cats basically just were just living in that room. So we have, all of these examples of things that you wouldn't think about. And these growing beds, they create this energy field, which people who are very sensitive to energy, they get to the front gate of the farm and there's people who've stopped and they've said, wow, like what is going on here, because I can feel the energy just parked outside. So that's been quite special.
And you are quite special.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm so sorry we have to wrap this up, but I've so enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, me
And
too. Thank you.
Teresa, if people wanted to reach out to you, if they wanted to engage your services, if they wanted to speak with you about their spaces and places that they're grooming to, how would they reach you, or how would they learn more about you?
Um, yeah, they can reach me through my email or website. I'm sure we can add it on to. I
We'll
can
add it into the
We can add it
description.
into the bio. They can reach me through there. I'm always available for no obligation, free of charge, initial conversation, phone conversation to discuss, to see, what they're looking for, what they're looking for to improve. Also to see, sometimes we're not aligned to work with the same people, so it's good to feel that you're aligned to work with the same with the person that you're choosing to bring into your business or to your home to work with.
So beautiful.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, thank you. And thank you for sharing your expertise, your light, your beacon of light, because see, for every space and every place there's an expertise and there is a gift that just amplifies that which should be. So we thank you for what you do and your contribution across the board. And
Thank you.
I hope you've learned a lot here because what Teresa brings is so, 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 so important. Everything has energy. Everything has energy,
Absolutely.
and we take so much for granted. And we need to understand that when we move into a space or we're designing or building a home or a space or a place or a business, and you're going, well, why doesn't my business work? Why doesn't my business just function? Did you just grab it and then just restock it and start running it? Did you take into consideration energetically why it may have fell in the
Mhm.
first place? So all of these pieces actually play a role in the overall harmony and harmonization of what we're trying to achieve.
Can I just add one little thing, one little point to that?
Absolutely.
Is that even within the interaction of the people who are in that space.
It's exactly, exactly. And finances are energy. So if you want everything to flow, step back and take the time to make sure that your space is harmonized. Step back and make sure that you're attracting those that would amplify and contribute to that harmonization, and you'll find everything flowing.
What a joy. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you again. So, if you like this episode, please like us, subscribe to us. Please share this with someone. Someone's going to need to learn about this and the spaces and the places that they're trying to design. So, share, 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 like us, and subscribe. And thank you for listening to another episode of The Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. And thank you to our guests, Teresa Victoria. And if you want to inquire and you can't seem to get a hold of her, you'd be happy to leave a message here and I'll make sure that it's forwarded to her. So take care and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.